Welcome to Haven Virtual Service. Glad you're with us. As always, we're going to go ahead and begin with a song of worship. We welcome you to participate in whatever way feels good to you. So you can sing along. You will be muted. You can just listen, whatever's going to help you connect this morning. So here we go. let's turn it over to Luca for our official welcome and announcements.
Good morning, I am Luca. On behalf of Haven, I want to welcome you today to our virtual Sunday service. Especially if you're here for the first time, we're glad you're joining us this morning. Our mission here at Haven Berkeley is to create a safe space for all kinds of people to grow in meaningful connection with others and with God. We hope you'll experience some of that while you're here with us today. A word on how we're streaming the service. Our web stream is sent from Zoom to YouTube. We try our best only to send video of those who are presenting to the group to our live stream. Oh, that fiddled with my script. Where'd you go? How do I get back to it? Oh wait, I found it. Sorry. But if you're concerned about your video appearing publicly, you can always keep your video camera turned off during the service. After the service, we'll stop the web stream, and those in the Zoom meeting are welcome to hang out for a casual chat till 12:30. Reminder about pastoral virtual office hours. Leah has a virtual sign-up sheet of times that work with her schedule to personally connect over Zoom, FaceTime, or phone. Even if you don't have an urgent need, this is an invite to all in the Haven community to stay connected and check in with Leah during this session. If you would appreciate a chance for a virtual check-in, sign up through the Sign Up Genius sheet found in Slack or on the Connect page on Haven's website. Haven's own Katie Kilby to preach next Sunday, April 26th. Katie is a graduate student at the Pacific School of Religion in Berkeley and part of the new Haven teaching team. Next Sunday, she will continue the series Leah started last Sunday on Resurrecting Hope. New creative spaces forming in Haven Slack. To anyone and everyone looking for creative outlets, eager for inspiration, or curious about exploring new artsy activities, as well as hoping for instruction and companionship on that journey, we encourage you to check out a couple of new Slack channels. A writers group is forming with guided prompts and instructions facilitated by Luca, me, through the channel hashtag writers assembling because we can, so we will. Also, the hashtag the Make Stuff Place channel will connect you with other folks who are interested in crafting, cooking, or pursuing other creative projects together. Join the fun, and if you need help getting on or navigating Slack, contact Jeannie. Now we're going to take a moment for community announcements. If anyone has something to share for about 30 seconds or less, raise your hand and we'll have you unmute, or you can put your announcement in the chat window. Oh, what happened to Slack? Oh no, I just got rid of Zoom. Oh, there it is. I'm not good with technology. Gallery, okay. Anybody, announcements? No? And now we'll turn things over to Chris for a moment of joy today.
Muted? There, unmute myself. Hi, good morning. The moment of joy. That was a tough one. You know, I'm not really a super excitable person, pretty serious. So I had to think about this a little bit, and it reminded me of this book I read a long time ago called No Ordinary Moments. So I decided to think about the things that happened this week that were somewhat ordinary, but felt a little different because I was taking notice. So my joy this week came from pausing to observe and feel ordinary moments, to breathe and notice and experience whatever was going on right in front of me. So this week, the stillness in the morning when I took my dog into the yard. We live right by the freeway and there's no more traffic noise, just the birds. And I hear so many different types of bird song that I never heard before. We had the simple pleasure of just taking a drive this weekend, yesterday. Dave and I, a clear day. We didn't have any supplies to procure, no lines to stand in. We just took a drive and it felt like a normal Saturday, and that was very joyful. I love seeing your guys' faces on Zoom and my family's faces, and I noticed that seeing faces makes my day better. So I'm grateful to see all your faces. I love getting mail. I got mail from a dear friend this week and I sent mail to loved ones. And we're seeing neighbors and waving. People are waving and smiling, and that's always very nice. I'm going to bed early. That's great. I love going to bed early. And I found my favorite Giants hoodie, and I've been listening. I've been listening to music that I forgot that I really loved. So old Grateful Dead stuff has been great. I don't know why. The soundtrack from Hair and 80s R&B. So I've been singing and dancing, and that kind of gets a little stress out. And if you sing Let the Sunshine In really loud, you can't help but be happy. So those are my joyful things. And then now I wanted to lead you guys in the opening prayer together. If you're ready, we'll begin. Oh, she's sharing the screen. There we go. Let's start. Creative, loving God, we come into your presence as a community seeking safety, deeper spirituality, and a sense of home. We thank you that you are the God who calls each of us from wherever we come and includes us fully in your family. In this community, we seek equal space for every race, every ethnicity, every gender, and every orientation. Let us make room here for rich and poor, ability and disability, left and right, belief and doubt. In a world that labels and divides, help us live together in acceptance and unity, finding you in the midst of all we do. Amen. Thanks, everybody. Now I'm turning it over to Leah for this morning's teaching.
All right. Good morning, everybody. If you don't know me and you're new here, welcome into this virtual space. I'm Leah. I am the pastor here at Haven Berkeley Faith Community. And as the others have said, we're glad you're with us. We welcome you. Thank you, Luca. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate you all. I'm just going to give a quick shout out. I got to be a part of the first writers group this Friday, and it was super fun, super generative. I think all of us who were collecting and part of the space that Luca was facilitating really appreciated it. And so if you have a creative bug in you that that you feel like, you know, maybe in this time might want to kind of get out and play, I totally recommend that you check out some of those things going on Slack. Whether it's writing, or Luca's also got a poll going for other crafty type things, whether people want to make masks or sew fun projects or cook. So you can kind of weigh in there. I totally recommend you check it out. So this morning, we're not doing a formal teaching during this rhythm of meeting every Sunday while we're all in quarantine. We won't necessarily be having a teaching every Sunday. And so this is one of those weeks where we're going to have more of a conversation. For those of you who are kind of just hanging out in this Haven space, maybe this is the first time, we welcome you to participate. We welcome you to be a fly on the wall. Whatever feels good to you is totally cool. So the particular conversation I wanted to bring you all into today is in regards to a conversation that's been kind of happening in some of the leadership circles of Haven of late. This year, we kind of changed up our leadership structure. That's been something that's been evolving. And so I wanted to both kind of share with the broader community what the current structure is, who's involved in it, et cetera, as well as then what we've been working on and be able to bring you all into it. The truth is, these areas of alignment we're going to be talking about, and that maybe some of you checked out after the email and Slack message that went out this week. You know, those were all composed before we were in pandemic life. And so I think it's an opportunity for us to think together about do these things still feel true as important things for Haven, for us as a community to grow in and to live into this year? And if so, what does that mean? That maybe it's going to look different than any of us might have imagined when we first were kind of brainstorming and considering together what we feel called to this year. So that's kind of the conversation I'm hoping we're going to have. And I totally welcome thoughts, questions, ideas, and it's not all going to happen today. So this is like bringing you all into the conversation that we hope will kind of be ongoing in whatever ways feel right. So that's the intro. The first thing I wanted to do before we look at the areas of alignment themselves is, like I mentioned, to go ahead and introduce the teams. So historically, the first thing that you have to do when you start a nonprofit organization or a church is to create a board of directors, right? To incorporate. And so that board has existed for, since Haven was an official 501c3, which is about 5 years ago. And so we've always had a board. It was very small in the beginning. We've had a lot of turnover in the last 5 years, a lot of people moving in and out. But our board has been growing steadily, and I'm super excited about who is a part of it now. So that's the first team, and our board of directors works with me to kind of make all of the logistical things happen. So let me just introduce to you who is on that team. I have talked with all our folks about, we're going to spotlight people. Some folks prefer to participate in the service via YouTube, and so they're not part of the Zoom call. So we'll just be broadcasting photos, or if people didn't want to put their face on the camera, that's also totally legit. So some of these we'll just put a photo up. Others will just go ahead and broadcast their Zoom face for a moment. Okay. So y'all know me. I am, in addition to being the pastor, also the president of the board. And then we've got Dawn Wong is our treasurer. So let's go say hi to Dawn. There's Dawn. Hi, Dawn. Awesome. And then let's see. Did I have a copy of mine? Oh yeah. Then Joanna is our secretary. Yeah, been so for many years. And then we've got Isaac Campion as on our board this year. Yep. This is his second year on the board. Also Kim DeWitt. We have the DeWitts somewhere here. Props to Jason, who's doing all the work of all of the producing. Sounds like he's trying to find the DeWitts on his, there we go. Hi, Kim. Okay, and then we've got Scott Figgins. Hey, Scott. Doug Hunt. Hey, Doug. Nice virtual background there. And then Deborah. We have a slide picture of Deborah. A lot of you know her too. We'll get that slide up. Just a moment. Okay, you see Deborah? Awesome. So that's the Haven board this year, 2020 board. And then this year, we've added 2 new teams. And my thought was, it's a lot for the board to be the only functioning body that is kind of working with me and whoever else is on staff to kind of, discern what we should be doing and then make it all happen. And so I thought maybe it would make sense as we grow as a community and as more and more people have, become part of the Haven community and they really have a lot to offer in terms of leadership, that we have a few different bodies that are kind of working alongside each other with some different emphases. So this new team that just started this year is called Envisioning Haven. And these are some folks who work with me to kind of come up with the vision of where we're going here. That's kind of their primary directive is discernment. And then the board is kind of the check on that discernment that says, yeah, that sounds good. Or I'm not sure if I'm following where you're saying you feel led to. And then we work together. The board kind of maybe takes more of the lead on the logistical pieces of living into the vision, but certainly people on both sides are involved in all of it. So here's who's on the vision team: myself, as well as Jeannie, our connections pastor. And then we've got a slide that shows you a picture of Phoebe Au Jung, who's also part of our vision team. We can spotlight Connie Barker is on the team. Hi, Connie. Then we've got John DeWitt, husband of Kim. So we saw him a bit ago, but we'll go ahead and say hello again if Jason can find them. Hi. Okay, and then I've got a picture of Ginny Prince. Their family is hunting today, so she sends her regards. Ginny is also on the Envisioning Haven team. And then let's do a spotlight of Elisa Winky. Hi, Elisa. Okay, so that is our Haven Vision team. And then the other new team that is new this year is a group of folks who are going to be working with me to develop as teachers, to be able to deliver Sunday morning content, as well as potentially we would love to develop other content, whether it's blogging, whether it's vlogging. We'll see where all that goes. But that's kind of the hope, is that either by having other folks doing more of the Sunday teaching, I also will have more capacity to do some of that other stuff. But I think having more voices speaking into all the channels would be meaningful. So these are all folks, some of them you've already seen, but we'll kind of just review. And then, yeah, so obviously I'm part of the teaching team. And then Katie Kilby, who will be speaking next week. This is Katie. And then Phoebe as well is part of the teaching team. We have a slide of her. We already saw it, but we can just to review. And then Deborah as well is also in this teaching team. You want to put the next slide up? And then finally, Melanie Tjonkson is the final member of that team. All right, so that's who the leaders currently, and obviously there are other places where other people are leading out in other ways, with small groups, with working with youth, all of that, worship, etc. But these are these kind of these teams that we're kind of going to be talking about sometimes, and I just wanted you to know who they are, because the thing we are doing today is kind of the first fruit of some of these teams functioning together. It's our first draft. Who knows? This is all an experiment. How we think if this is useful or not. But I think so far it's been useful. So this group that I gathered, this new Envisioning Haven team, we started meeting early in the year, January, I think, and with the goal of starting together to discern kind of what did we feel called to really try to emphasize, live into, prioritize this year. And rather than that just being like a group of people going up to a mountain and hearing from the Lord, the experience has really been about paying attention to what has already been activated in the broader community, as well as each of us. I gathered those particular people because I do think each of them has a gift of discernment in different ways. And so I wanted to have folks have conversations together, do their own step back and do their own discerning, and then come together and see where are we aligning. And so that's kind of the process behind what you're going to see today. But the first step in that process is something that a lot of you, whether you are a part of any of these teams or not, were involved in. And I just want you to know that. So I'm going to remind those of us who were at the Haven Retreat last fall, and for you, those who weren't, I just want to bring you into what we did there. We have an image of this brainstorming experience we did. So this past fall, the conversation that we were having as a community through the teachings and certainly through our retreat was about what we called the home we're building together, where we were really considering together, what is it, if Haven is a spiritual home, what kind of a home do we want it to be? And what should be a part of it? And so, Brett, the architect, drew up this beautiful little image for us to use as the backdrop for our brainstorming, and we had it, a blank slate at the beginning, and by the end of it, it looked more like this. Okay, so we had all these Post-it notes with all these different ideas that different folks in the community who were present generated. And then for those of you who weren't there at the retreat but were with us in the fall, you may have found on a Sunday, we had this as well at Washington Elementary for people who missed the retreat or who had new ideas that they wanted to contribute to be able to kind of add to the dream house. And so that's kind of where this has all started. And that was the jumping off point for our vision team early this year, was to kind of take a deeper look at that house, to kind of go through every single idea there, and to begin to notice like where the common themes were emerging, what kind of, while there might be a lot of different things named in different ways, a lot of them really did have pretty similar resonance, and that we could kind of group them. And so that is kind of where these 4 areas of alignment have come, is a lot of what was in the house ends up in one of these, as well as, as our vision leaders stepped back after looking at it all and did their own prayer and discernment work. And then I asked them to come back to us with like top 2 or 3 kind of goals or things that you feel really kind of passionate about, that Haven should be kind of emphasizing this year. We just found a remarkable amount of overlap. And that's where we get these 4, what we're calling the areas of alignment. So what we're going to do, my thought is with this conversation is I want to share them. And then we're going to try something we haven't done before. It's a newer Zoom feature where we can take a little poll. And I'm going to use that. It's just an anonymous poll through Zoom to kind of get some initial impressions around these from the broader group. And then that might help direct kind of what direction where we might want to emphasize some of our time as a bigger group, having a conversation around this stuff. And then we'll break up into our smaller breakout groups, and some conversation can continue there as well. All right, does that make sense for kind of the format we're going for? Cool. All right, so let's see. First off, let's just go ahead and read through the 4, and I have a slide for each of them. And then I'll take the quick poll to see kind of what's resonating. Okay, so the first area of alignment we're calling relational community. And then I just have a little bit of more of a description by what we're talking about. We're hoping to increase relational investment that folks in the community have for one another, to bring more folks in the community into the work of nurturing relationships, so relationships are more networked with one another, and LEA doesn't serve as the central hub to which all are connected. Just to be clear, I love you all so much. But we have, I think, recognized amongst a lot of folks we're naming, they feel maybe connected to me, but they don't necessarily feel connected to one another. And so that's something that the goal has been to kind of move us into a more networked series of relationships. All right, so that's number 1. Number 2, powerful and relevant spiritual connection. Nurture connection to the divine through thoughtful teaching and powerful and relevant spiritual practices, musical, liturgical, charismatic, etc., that reflect our evolving reconstruction of Jesus-centered faith. Okay, so hopefully that means something. I won't go into too much detail there yet. Okay, the third area of alignment we're calling broadening Haven's reach. Pursue strategic partnerships and coalitions, as well as opportunities to demonstrate our mission and values in the public square, increase our visibility, and increasing our visibility and enabling us to practically live out the implications of our faith. Okay. And the 4th one, we're articulating as a justice lens in all pursuits. So here we're saying we want to work with a diverse collective of leaders in the Haven community to continually examine the ways our efforts as a community of faith can support greater justice, inclusion, and equity, particularly for marginalized folks in our communities and the communities we partner with and serve. Okay, so these are kind of the 4 areas that we're saying we feel called to live into it. And they should all matter. And hopefully you have some sense that they all resonate with kind of what you already know of Haven. But it's like if we had to prioritize things, and there are certainly plenty of other things we could name as important too. These feel like the 4 that we feel particularly called to this year, and probably beyond. But I just want to, before we go further into discussing any one of them, I wanted to kind of take a quick temperature poll. So we'll see how this goes. There's 3 questions. They're pretty straightforward. I don't remember. I think we have to launch the poll. I didn't write them down. But basically, they're just going to ask you kind of what, I think one of them is like, where do you feel like we are, you're seeing that already being activated, the most, as well as one about where do we have the most room for growth, and which ones of these most connect with yourself and how your own priorities right now. So the first 2, I'm just going to ask for 1 answer, and the second one you can give us up to 2. Okay, so we're just going to take a quick poll. It's anonymous, so we won't know who said what. We're just going to get some aggregate numbers of, okay, are we all lining up similarly? Do we have differences? I think it could just help influence a little bit of the conversation on what direction maybe we want to take it. So we'll give you a few minutes. It's totally optional. You don't have to take the poll. I think Jason's working on trying to launch it. Sorry, we haven't done this before, so. Do you want to skip that thing?
I can't, when we sign in here, it
Oh.
we can do the poll here now, but I can't do the poll on here, so.
Huh. Oh, maybe we won't be able to do it after.
Can Jeannie launch it?
Okay, so Jason, so we've had a couple, I'm signed in as apparently as 2 users right now, and it made it so that I don't have power over the poll anymore. Jeannie, you are I think you are listed as a alternative host. Do you see any capacity for you to launch a poll? It should be on the bottom menu if you have it.
Yeah, I see it.
Do you want to see if you can launch it?
I did press launch. I don't know what anybody else sees. You have it? Okay.
All
Awesome.
right, so let's go ahead and take the poll. We'll just give you guys a few minutes. Do we have a sense of where people are at? Does it look like most people who wanted to take it have taken it?
Not yet.
Okay,
They're still doing the questions.
okay.
I think everybody who wanted to take it took it. So do I just press end poll?
Yeah, Elisa, were you able to finish it? Not sure. Did you end it yet?
No, I didn't.
Okay, do you need? You still having issues? Okay. All right, should we go ahead and end it then? Amanda unchecked and then rechecked, and did that seem to work? Okay. All right. Well, why don't we go ahead and end it, and then I believe we can share the results. We'll see.
Can people see it? Awesome.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Mhm. All right, let's look at this totally makes sense to me. Okay, so let's just look through one at a time. Which areas do you think Haven's currently exhibiting the most effort? And so it seems like the vast majority, we're a relational community, which totally makes sense to me. And that's encouraging. I think there is that reality, right? This is where it gets interesting of like, what do these other things even look like in this season? And there is a reality maybe of like, what are people most feeling the urgent need for right now, given pandemic life? So I think relational community is a big one. And that's certainly a place where we have been putting effort in. But I think it's interesting to think about these other ones where there hasn't maybe been as much focused effort and what that might look like. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Let's look at these others. Which areas do you think we have the most room for growth? I think it's interesting to see so much kind of equity of split here, like that these are coming up pretty, not quite quarter, but very close, right? So that's interesting. Really, we have a lot of work to do on all of the things, which is good. And then this last one. This is interesting too. I mean, I guess it makes sense that that relational community is what is most people are feeling most like their own personal alignment with, and that's also what we're doing the most energetically right now. It doesn't surprise me that no one would say broadening Haven's reach. That makes sense too. That's not necessarily a personal thing. And it's, I think, meaningful to think about as a community, where do we put that? It was one thing for us to be discerning. We want everyone to know this thing exists, and maybe we still feel that way. But maybe that's shifted a little bit being in this current moment. Yeah, and then seeing that these other two are pretty split, both the spiritual connection and the justice lens. I think that there's a lot that I'm curious to figure out how we do those things, what that looks like now in this season. So, all right, so that's super interesting to me. Are there any initial thoughts anyone else wants to make about those results before we kind of go into maybe looking at one at a time? I have some ideas of where I've noticed we're kind of living into some of those things that we can talk through, and then maybe share other ideas about what that could look like. But anyone have any other initial observations or questions? Okay, I don't see any. Okay, so the first one, this relational community, that was the one that was easiest for me to come up with, just a few off the top of my head, ways of naming people, efforts that we're currently trying to live into. So Slack, community groups. We made this directory a few weeks back so that in theory people could be contacting each other. I'm not sure how much people are, but that's there. Some of the ad hoc virtual gatherings like the writers group, etc. The rapid response team being available to help equip people with things that come up. And even these more interactive parts of our service, and certainly the breakout groups, the little coffee hour chat we do afterwards, all of those, I think, potentially help with this community stuff. true. I like what Scott is saying, that this is a high priority. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's Scott's making a good point, that as much as we feel like it's clearly people say we're putting energy here, that doesn't necessarily mean that we've mastered it, right? It could just mean that first question wasn't that, like, are we knocking it out of the park or anything? It was really just like, where do you consistently seeing us put some effort in? But that there also is room for growth. So yeah, I mean, we can talk about if folks have a sense of what, even with all the things that we're trying to do, where it feels like it's falling short, or I would love to see us lean into XYZ. Yeah, that makes sense. I think that you're not the only one, Chris, who feels that way about the broadening reach piece. I think it's tricky for everybody. So it's hard to know. And I'm totally open to reframing. But let's for a moment stay on this. Let's stay on this question of community. I don't know. What do you think? Would people appreciate some sort of midweek check-in? Okay, sorry. Going forward, I was just asked if I can summarize the chat for folks on YouTube. I will do my best. So I will try to do that if I can keep up with it. So right now, I'm going to try to focus us on this question of relational community. So Jeannie's thrown out, would people want a midweek check-in just to check in as a community? Scott on that topic, I think, has thrown out that while people were voting, as this is something we're doing, it's at least 28% of the respondents said that this is something they feel like is a big need for growth in. And so yeah, I'm open, and you don't all have to have ideas now, but I think part of this is just bringing us all into these shared intentions, so that we can all be holding them together and continuing to think about what it means for us to live into them. So if anyone else has ideas they want to share or responses to that thing about, I think Jeannie and I personally have been in a place of like, can't totally tell what feels good to folks right now, in terms of how much connection. Are we all just overwhelmed with all the Zoom? And some more of that doesn't necessarily feel good. Yeah, Amanda says yes. And it is hard. It is overwhelming because I think a lot of us feel that. I get it. I feel similarly. I feel a pull of I want to be connected, and only virtual connection is hard, and so it's hard to know how not to be overwhelmed by it. But Elisa likes the idea of a midweek check-in. So okay, what would that look like? Like something similar. I'm gonna try not to. I'm going to try for the moment just to keep the conversation. So I may not respond to some things that don't feel like they're particularly about this piece, and we'll try to get back to them. I can read it. Yeah, I'm just trying to. Okay, so right, but I'm trying. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm feeling a little overwhelmed by. I can read the things, but if they're not pertinent to the thing we're talking about right now, it feels like a little jumbled to me. So I'm trying to figure out how to do that. Let's try to stay, for the moment, hold the thoughts if they're not specifically about the community piece, and then we will get to them. And I might need to ask you to submit your comment again, so that I can get to it when we get to that particular theme. Because I think there's really rich stuff here, and I agree. So let's just try to stay on this one. Yes, so Jeannie's suggesting maybe a midweek check-in could look like after our church service hangout, something very similar, casual like that. Katie is saying maybe we could do a pen pal thing with snail mail, online friends playing online games as a group. So visual potluck or coffee hour, those are all great ideas. Can I name that it's super helpful for probably me and Jeannie if again with this question of like the hub and the spokes and the wheel, or you guys know what I'm saying. I don't want to have to be the person who organizes all of the things, and so I want to empower you all to, whether it's through Slack, whether you prefer email, whatever the option is. You know, if you feel like, man, I could totally do a game night, take it, invite some people, do it. That would be great. Similar to like what Luca has taken on with the creative spaces. You don't need permission from me. You don't need to put it on a Haven calendar. You know, just go for it if you feel called to do something like that. Okay. I understand that thing that Amanda says. It's easy. It was easier to connect with people but I was already connected to before the pandemic. It's hard now to make new connections. But potluck coffee hour sounds good. Cool. All right. So we can continue to think about that stuff and submit ideas through Slack. And like I say, maybe we'll have, you know, one or two that are kind of like the whole community shows up for this coffee hour on Wednesdays or whatever it is. But whoever wants to, that I'll organize. But I also, again, empower you to start to feel free to organize your own things. And then let's move into number 2, okay? Powerful and relevant spiritual connection. So this is just a few ideas that came to mind of like places we're starting to do this, but honestly, it's hard right now. I feel like when we initially were discerning this, the kinds of things we were imagining doing more of, we're all in the setting of corporate gatherings together in person with like live musicians in the same room. And so that kind of thing feels hard to me to think about right now, but I feel like it's a challenge worth trying to allow our creative juices to flow and not say, okay, we're just not going to care about creating powerful and relevant spiritual connection through practices. So I open it up for you all to think about what that might look like. I don't know if anything comes to mind right now, or if it's just something we want to be thinking about going forward. Obviously, you know, this thing is going to be evolving, right? Like the bit we know is that there isn't going to be like probably a grand moment where in a month all of a sudden we can all start gathering in large groups again. It'll probably be more a phased thing. And so maybe there will be a place where at least a band could be here in a room with me, even if we can't all be together or something. And so this stuff will be evolving probably. It's good to hear the prayer groups have been wonderful, Danielle says. Scott and Sylvia say there's an opportunity every weekday between 7:15 and 8 to pray with Sylvia and Connie. So that's another one. Yes, that's a great example. That is in the morning. And Friday nights, Connie says. And then every Thursday at 7:30, there's also a group prayer call that people can participate in. What else? Would folks be interested in, I don't know, like a reading group along these kinds of, you know, in this kind of genre? I don't know. I'm just open to kind of what folks might appreciate a book club. Yeah, okay, so Lisa says maybe. She would love a book club. Jeannie says, does anyone musical feel led to, are you saying want to lead in worship during the midweek thing? I'm not sure I fully understand that question. Like if somebody would be up for leading a few songs. That could be great. I'm always happy to, during our Sunday gathering too, just to name, like if anyone else wants to lead a song, we're happy to throw the spotlight that way. It is, it's always an invitation there. Okay. Okay, so either Scott or Sylvia is saying they would appreciate music midweek as a participant. Okay. So I think lots of people would like singing. I'll be honest, I don't know how many people from what I can, it is hard to lead. Let's just name that. It's hard to do that in this setting. And I don't want to put pressure on musicians to do it. So I am willing to do it, certainly on Sundays. I'll think about if I have space to do it. I mean, it doesn't take a lot from me, but even just the tech of making it sound good is a group effort. So I don't want to sign Jason on to needing to do that more than once a week. So yeah, but we'll continue to think about it and to make opportunities. And it's good to hear that that interest is there. And, you know, one thing we could continue to try to do is also create videos that aren't live as musicians are available, myself or others, for folks just to share, and you can worship with it either together during some sort of Zoom gathering, if one of us isn't able to be there doing it live, or on your own. Yeah, no, I mean, anybody, I'm just saying, yes, I think that's a great idea. If people are up for it, if they feel, yes. Disney karaoke, people could, you don't have to be an official musician. You can just sing a cappella. You can also, I mean, you know, there are certainly people who are doing all kinds of creative things right now. So, you know, I know that some churches don't have, I mean, most churches don't have a pastor who also happens to play guitar. So a lot of them are doing more like let me put together a playlist of some of my favorite artists and you all listen to it and worship to it and then we get together. You know, like there are certainly other things we could try if people are more wanting music together. So yeah. The hard thing is right now with singing together, there's a question about that. Sadly, you know, it's really a technology issue. I have heard that there are efforts to create tech that does that better. But I think mainly the issue is latency with all of the different internet connections. I don't know if it's ever really going to be able to be overcome to the level that I think people in a broader community would need to be able to actually to be synchronized. And that's really the problem. I have heard some software might be better than others, but I think the kind of basically the technical answer is I don't think we can get there probably anytime soon, which is a big bummer. I miss it so much, hearing harmony with my singing or harmonizing to y'all. So yeah, Luca. Okay, so Lucas might be interested, open to giving some basic music, voice, instrument lessons if people are looking to do something very casual. So you can be thinking about that. Thank you, Luca. All right. Chris says they make it look so easy on TV. Yeah, all those videos, also like all the videos that make it look like they're singing on a Zoom call together, it's a lie. It's tech. They've been edited to look like that. So anyway, 9 instruments, humble brag. Thank you, Luca. That is awesome. So yes, people take him up on it. So, okay. What else? Let's move into the next one. This is that question, broadening Haven's reach. Are we just talking evangelism here? And that feels kind of gross, particularly if we've come from an evangelical background. And so I just want to name, no, I don't think anyone in the leadership team was thinking that way. But I don't want to necessarily speak for the team. But so vision team people, if you feel like I'm misrepresenting you, feel free to chime in. But I think there is that piece that we've been naming. I think what people feel called to, and that we noticed there were a number of things like on the board, were like on the dream house, things in the alignment of, like one of our favorite experiences from recent years. And I'm sad to think that we won't get to do it this year, but showing up at Oakland Pride and having this big float, and being able to be super present and joyous and let people know that there are communities of faith that love and affirm LGBTQ folks and want folks to feel safe in our community. And so that's why I say I don't know if Pride will happen. And obviously, that's San Francisco Pride isn't happening in June, and I think it's too soon to say what will happen in September. And so that's where I'm kind of like, I'm not holding my breath that it will happen. Okay, well, maybe something virtually, and maybe we will participate virtually, but whatever that means. But that is, I think, some of what we were talking about, as well as, growing in partnerships with other organizations. Now, that also feels tricky right now, because I think there's lots of opportunities, but in terms of like building, coalitions, it's just a weird moment. Everything is virtual. It's hard to know where to engage. I personally at least feel that a little bit overwhelmed. And so I think that's a question. But I think the bigger piece that why this was on here is just, it's not so much about, everyone needs to believe what we believe or even come to our church. We need to have this big, huge community. That's not at all, I think, the spirit. But I think there is a place of like, I think there are people who in our broader community would want to know that something like Haven exists, and how do we let them know? What does that mean? And I think that it's weird right now. Okay. I missed Jess's comment. Can you scroll it up? Jess says, I think there's a very different way of showing and expressing what's happening at Haven that's not that traditional Christian thing that's a bit creepy with the pushiness and conversion stuff. There is a way to share, but it may take some gracefulness given what people expect from Christian communities and churches generally. Yes, and it looks like a lot of people are saying yes to that comment. And I totally agree. So I think that is the bigger thing we wanted to bring you all into, why that's on the list, right? This is an intention. This isn't about like having a marketing team or an evangelism team that's gonna, kind of, I think we all don't want, Elisa says, we just need to be very clear about how we define this so that ex-evangelicals aren't triggered, including myself. Chris says, my friend runs an affirming church in San Mateo, threefold increase in attendance now that it's virtual. Interesting. Okay. And then, yes, I want to come back to the comments about diversity, race, and family structure. I was figuring we would talk about those under the justice lens. So we'll come back to them in just a moment. Although all of this, they're all intertwined. But on that final piece about broadening Haven's reach, I don't know if there's anything else to say there. I just feel like it's a weird moment right now. There's like, yes, we're online, so in theory, anyone can be a part of it. And yeah, I mean, hi, you folks who we haven't actually met in person yet, and you're here, and that's great, and we love you, and we're happy to have you in the space. And it's also, I think, yeah, it's I don't know, this is all new, what this means. So anyway, let's move on, because I agree, they're not distinctive. Like this question about justice lent, the reason it's in all pursuits, it's saying all of these things we want to read through a justice lens. We recognize that growing as a diverse community, as a community that's safe for a diverse group of people, is core to what it means to invite people in, is core to the way we do community, is core to informing our spirituality and the practices we would live into there. So these are all interlocked. I just want to name that. They're not distinctive things. And particularly this one is perhaps like, you know, if you put all the Venn diagram together, it's like one that should be kind of overlaying it all, right? So Connie says, I think the justice piece is part of how we do the outreach honestly, but how do we do it as a church? What does it mean to do that as a Jesus-centered spiritual community? Really good question. Personally, and I would like to, I feel like I might have missed specifically Deborah's comment that Scott was referencing. So if you want to post it again, or we can try to go back and find it. As a community, Haven is somewhat diverse, I see, she wrote, but not so much in terms of income, family structure, and racial diversity. I think this is an area we should explore and decide what, if anything, we're willing to do to alter this reality. I think that's right on. Okay. Oh, thank you for reposting too. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I got distracted by some of the other comments. I just want to sit with that. I think it is, you know, in terms of what I put on the list of ways we're current efforts we're currently putting forward. I feel like this, I mean, this is where I see the most need for potentially more strategic effort, whether it's creating some ways to do some deep learning together around what growth in this area could look like through reading, through I mean, we did this one kind of ad hoc conversation based on a documentary. We could do more of that kind of thing. It might be interesting to have some folks who are kind of tasked with looking at all of the things we're doing and you know, helping kind of shine a mirror as to where we have space for growth. What would that mean? Jess says, key question I wonder about, oh, sorry, well, I am reading it. So does that outreach to a diverse community mean the diversity has to exist at Haven as people who are only Christian? If that makes sense, like, does the philosophy of the prayer at the beginning mean that the diversity is only for those who identify as Christian? Okay, sorry. Or does it truly mean everyone's welcome fully, just something to think about? If that makes Haven different. I think that's a good point. And I have always named that, you know, we're trying to hold this tension of, you know, in terms of we're centering as a Jesus-centered community, but we're also saying we want to make space for people wherever they're coming from and wherever, you know, however they articulate their faith or their spirituality, to feel safe and to feel like they can feel at home. And so it's a both and that's personally how I would answer that. And that makes it really challenging, but also I think hopeful. So Lucas says he doesn't strongly identify as Christian, thinks the opening prayer is well worded and inclusive regardless of God, Jesus, Lord speaks. So I think my understanding is there are others in the community who would feel similarly. And so that's the hope. It's the hope. Do others feel like they have something they want to name about this? Otherwise, we're actually, wow, this went longer than I thought. We should move into something else. Okay, yeah. Sorry, I lost track of time. Y'all had lots of ideas. Okay, so I am going to look through this chat window more. I'm going to keep talking about it with our leaders, and I'm going to invite you all into more collaboration and to continue to share your ideas. I am wondering, here's what I'm wondering. So I was initially thinking we would go to breakout groups and that those would end about now. So now I'm wondering if we should just skip that. I don't know. What do you guys think? Or do you want to still do it, but it'll mean, you know, less time maybe for some of the music and things like that? Do others feel like skipping the breakouts is okay? Okay, so how about we just name that if I have 2 minutes left on the timing that I thought we would be ending the breakout groups. So this is your chance. If you have another burning comment on any of the four, please put it in, or you can get on the camera and speak. Connie, marginalized communities often have strong faith traditions that are important for survival. Different family structures too. Making room for that is vital. Cheers. Yes. Yeah. Katie says, I think we should have an intentional follow-up convo to discuss in more depth what Deborah raised, especially around racial diversity and representation and a sense of belonging. Yeah, I agree. I don't think we got this slide up, but I mean, I think I personally am in a place of naming, you know, it is such a work in progress. Part of like one place where I see movement is that, you know, even having these 3 teams is intentionally moving us into a place where we have more diverse leadership and having more spaces for more voices to be represented. And my hope is that that will be continuing to happen over time. But that's just a tip of the iceberg. I recognize that's only one small piece. And so my hope is by empowering leadership, then it's not just about, I'm not the bottleneck for all of the places we need to grow, but I really want to empower the community to be holding these and helping us grow as a community in all of these ways. And that leadership structure will grow and be, you know, more representative. I'm not saying we're there yet. It's just movement from where things have been, but we still have a long way to go. Okay, so yes, I think we'll continue the conversations. I think this has been helpful to it's been helpful for me to have you all be a part of it, and hopefully helpful for you all going forward to kind of know what tensions we're trying to hold and what intentions we want to live into together as we explore what it means to do community this way for however long we're doing it and beyond. All right. So thank you I know this isn't the ideal way to do conversation, but I'm grateful for your participation and hopefully it was fruitful. So we're going to now take a moment to kind of do some worship and et cetera together. And as we start that off, I want to turn things over to Jeannie, who's going to lead us through a prayer moment.
Okay, transition moment. I would like to bring us back as we enter into a time of worship. And I would like to lead you in a contemplative prayer. And a contemplative prayer is just a practice of opening our mind and our heart and our whole being to God. It's taking a pause and being present and open to the divinity in our midst. And I know there was just a lot of conversations, so maybe this is a good time to take a contemplative pause to bring our hearts and minds focus back to God and what he's doing in our midst, amongst us individually and in our nation. One practice of contemplation is reading a scripture called Lectio Divina, and I would like to lead us in this practice this morning. I will read this passage of scripture, and as I do, I want you to think about what season we are in, I know we have talked about liminal space and how the season feels so unbounded, but if we think of time as seasons as opposed to linear, then this too shall pass. And we are just in a season, maybe undefined, but is a season nonetheless. So I'm going to read the scripture passage 3 times. So I would like you to just close your eyes and still yourself. And breathe in slowly and notice your breath. And as I read, think about what season you are in. For everything, there is a season, a time for every activity under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to harvest, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to cry and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to turn away, a time to search and a time to quit searching, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be quiet and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. I'll read it again. I want you to think about what season we are in as a faith community. For everything, there is a season, a time for every activity under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to harvest, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to cry and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to turn away, a time to search and a time to quit searching, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be quiet and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. Now I'll read it one more time, and I want you to think about what season we are in as a nation in this world right now. For everything, there is a season, a time for every activity under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to harvest, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to cry and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to turn away, a time to search and a time to quit searching, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be quiet and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. May God's presence be here with us this morning. Amen.
I'm going to lead us in an old hymn that's ultimately about being led, about having vision. And it feels like that's the conversation we're having right now. And that's what Jeannie was just inviting us into as well. So I invite you to stay in that place and sing this with me if you want. Be thou my vision, still be my vision, oh ruler of all. The heart of my own heart, whatever befall, still be my vision, oh ruler of all. So before we go into the next song, I want to just share with you those questions I was going to potentially offer up if we went into breakout groups, because I think they could still be questions for reflection. And I think they're in the All About Sunday channel if you want to take a look at them later, so that we can continue allowing the divine to speak to us and through us about how we grow in these things. So I'm just going to put those up real quick and read them as your own reflection questions. So again, which of these areas most align with your own priorities for spiritual community? We kind of did a poll on that, but to invite folks to really think about that. Which of these areas do you sense will be the most challenging for Haven to grow in? And then reflection on how might your own gifts, experiences, or interests contribute to Haven growing in one or more of these areas. What might that mean? Just going to let you sit with those. And if you do have thoughts that you want to share at some point, feel free to do that on Slack. Feel free to reach out to me or to Jeannie or to anyone on those leadership teams that you feel comfortable and safe reaching out to. And we would love to, to continue the dialogue. All right, so I want to invite us into a song we learned a little while ago, not too long ago. This is a song about recognizing that we've been given bodies and that they're good. And I feel like it's a weird song and an important one to sing right now because I can't touch you. Like, there's something strange, I think, about what it's been like to be a month without physically having contact with one another. And that's meaningful to think about and meaningful to grieve where we need to grieve it and to acknowledge. And so I just invite you to come into your body as you sing this song and to honor what your body needs right now, to honor where your body maybe is missing certain physical touch, sensation, experiences that aren't possible, as well as to give thanks for the places where your body is getting you through. You gave us these bodies and you called them good. You gave us these bodies and you called them good. We're easily damaged. Have you seen the scars? That's just scratching the surface, or beneath where those are. You gave us these bodies and you called them good. You gave us these bodies and you called them good. May we love them as you do. Let us love them as you do. Inside we do so much damage? Have you seen the scars? We keep hurting each other. Sometimes that's just how we are. You gave us these bodies and you called them good. You gave us these bodies and you called them good. May we love them as you do. Let us love them as you do. Inside, outside, through and through. Let us love them as you do. These bodies, they are fearfully, wonderfully made. Don't believe the lies some will say. No, our flesh and bones, our hearts and hands loved in every way. Our flesh and bones, our hearts and hands are loved in every way. You gave us these bodies and you called them good. You gave us these bodies and you called them. You gave us these bodies and you called them good. You gave us these bodies and you called them good. You gave us these bodies and you called them good. May we love them as you do. Let us love them as you do. Inside, outside, through and through. Let us love them as you do. Amen. Let's invite Deirdre to come and lead us through communion, and then we'll have one more song.
Will you join me in remembering Jesus' invitation to all of us? The Lord Jesus, on the night he was betrayed, took bread, and having given it thanks, he broke it, saying, "This is my body, broken for you. Whenever you eat of it, remember me." In the same way, after supper, he took the cup, saying, "This is the new covenant, sealed in my blood. Whenever you drink of it, remember me." Therefore, whenever we eat the bread or drink the cup, we proclaim the Lord's death until he comes again. Amen. Jesus invited his followers to experience his love for them as he poured out his very life on their behalf. In the same way, you are invited to eat and drink with Jesus. During the next song, we encourage you to take communion with whatever elements you have in your home. And if you do not have elements available, we welcome Jesus to be present with you just the same. Please pray with me. Jesus, we thank you for the way you have demonstrated the love of God for each of us by offering us your own self. We remember and honor you today. May your Spirit fill us as we eat this bread and drink this cup, and nourished by that Spirit, may we always embody love to all around us. Amen.
God was that God bless you and keep you. May God make God's face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May God lift up the countenance of the divine on you and bring you peace. Amen, friends. Thank you for spending the morning with us. Thank you for engaging in this conversation. Just the start of it. I look forward to all the ways that it will continue and that we will grow together in all of these things. So thank you for that. We're going to officially end our virtual service now. We invite folks to stick around if you're on Zoom and want a little coffee hour chat. I got some silly questions for us to think about and just to connect. So we'll see you there.